Uh, Today we're going to interview Jason Bottorff,
Bottorff.
Bottorff, and we'd like to welcome him here. My name is Paul Julian. I'm with the Veterans Memorial Center on Merritt Island, doing an interview for the Veterans History Project. The date is April 21st, and it is 10 minutes after 10 in the morning. And so I'm just delighted to have Jason here. And so we'll start by asking Jason, where were you born?
Waynesboro, Pennsylvania.
And the who are or were your parents, and what were their occupations?
So my mom was a potter, ceramics, and my father was a professor at I think Pitt, um, or maybe even a community college.
Mhm.
I think we were near Mount Dora, Pennsylvania, in that area. Um, he was a mathematician, really.
Mm-hmm.
He got his PhD at 26.
Mm-hmm.
Two PhDs.
Mm-hmm.
So he was a pretty good student.
Mm-hmm.
Um, from there, my mother and father broke up. They split. He had a problem with alcoholism, so she moved us down to Miami, and that's basically where I grew up.
Okay. Uh,
Kendall.
Kendall. Jason, did you have any brothers and sisters?
Oh yeah, I got one sister, Alexis, and my mother remarried and had a son. His name is Arthur, and his last name is Richmond. He teaches English, and my sister is also a teacher. She teaches locally. I teach locally.
Okay.
We're all
And-
teachers.
And what do you teach, Jason?
I'm certified for physics, but any chance I get to teach chemistry, I take it.
Okay. That's kind of, you love chemistry.
I like chemistry. I like to teach it. It's more fun.
Okay.
It's not because the kids call me Walter White. It's just a fun thing to teach.
Okay.
It's a fun thing to teach. Physics is fun too.
Um, digressing a bit, did your brother or sister, did they serve in the service?
No, just
Okay.
me.
Okay. And what were your parents? What was your parents and siblings' opinion about you joining the service?
So my dad had already died. He died at 46, and I didn't really know him. My mother was kind of cool with it, as long as I was out of the house.
Okay.
It's time for me to go, right? So
Go ahead.
I joined pretty much because I didn't really have direction in my life,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted a few more years to think about it.
Okay.
I know many people join because they're gung-ho and they want to serve.
Mm-hmm.
I joined because, I do like America, of course, but I wanted some direction, and I wanted to think a little more about where I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I joined, and I did well in the ASVAB, and picked up a job. 24 Tango was my first MOS, Patriot Missile Operator Mechanic.
And so, join meaning you started enlisted, huh?
I did. I did. So I went to basic at Fort Sill. That was rough.
Rough.
It was.
The transition.
Yeah. Well, just Oklahoma. I got there in September. It's actually hotter than Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time we graduated in November, it was freezing cold.
Mm-hmm.
It's a wild place out there. It's a rough place to go to basic.
Okay. Did you, what primary and secondary and college did you attend? At that point, you hadn't attended college, right?
No.
Okay. What primary and secondary schools did you attend in Miami area?
Oh, so I went to Hammocks Middle School, brand new school. Um, Left that, went to Sunset for a little bit, and then I moved up to Ocala
Mm-hmm.
because my stepdad and I weren't getting along, so I had to live with my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to high school at Vanguard
Mm-hmm.
in Ocala.
Okay.
Graduated from there.
Okay. And just a, did you? So you were always basically STEM oriented?
Um, Not really.
No.
Not really. Uh, I I think in high school I did get up to physics
Mm-hmm.
and pre-calculus, so I was pretty good at it.
Mhm.
Math and science.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Okay. So let's go into the right before you joined and right when you joined. Can you tell us about when you went into the military? Were you drafted or did you enlist?
So I enlisted in 1992. Can't remember when I met with the recruiter, but I think I was still in high school. But I was slated to after the summer. But I remember going to MEPS. I was still in high school. I went to Tampa MEPS
Mm-hmm.
station. It was open back then.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I got the printout of my job. I was looking for military intelligence. I scored pretty high on the ASVAB. But they had a 4-year enlistment, air defense artillery.
And how about the intelligence? Did they have to put more time in?
Well, they didn't have anything open at that time
Mm-hmm.
in military intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was probably going to have to wait till December or maybe even the next year. And I was just like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'll take this Patriot missile job. It looks pretty good.
Yeah.
So I took that, and that was a year of drill sergeants.
Mm-hmm. And you're.
So the Patriot missile, when it came out, you could either be the truck driver, which is a 16 Tango at the time, and that was a 6-week course. So when you got done with basic, you did 6 weeks on the hill at El Paso, Abernathy Park, and you were off to your duty station. If you were 24 Tango like me, you had to learn the launchers, then the radar, then the antenna mass group, all the commo stuff. You had to learn how to map all the stuff. I don't want to get into any classified information, but you had to learn how to fix just about everything on the Patriot missile system and learn how to fight it. So it was, I went in, I think September 17th, 1992. I got done with training August 1993. From that time on, it was drill sergeants the whole way.
And if we can, I do remember, Jason, that
I was so glad to get out of there.
during our Sea Cadet drill,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
you know, it was about that time, about 3-4 months ago,
Uh-huh.
that the U.S. in the current war that America is supporting the Ukrainians,
With Ukraine?
right?
Yes.
And the fact that I talked about, they had said, "Look, we're going to give them the Patriot."
Right,
And
the
you
Patriot
talked
missile
about,
system.
and I asked, do you see any problems with that? Could you just elaborate us?
Sure. There's a lot of problems with sending the Patriot missile system to Ukraine. Number one, I hear that the Russians are firing a lot of missiles and drones that are duds,
Mm-hmm.
just to make the other side spend money. The missiles of the Patriot missile system are very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
$500,000 to $1 million back, and that was in the 90s. So I don't even know what they are now. It'll do the job, but you can't move it. If you move it, it breaks. So they originally designed it to go with the cavalry. They had the system called Hawk. Hawk couldn't cut it. They built the Patriot missile system to move with the cavalry. They could not do it. It broke all the time. And I mean, it's built well.
So
It's
reliability is just not there.
it's not a tank.
Yeah.
You know, it's a
It's not
giant
mobile.
system. It's a company-size deal. You have mess kits for food. You have all the gear for sleeping. You have
All a
all
part
the
of the
truck
unit.
drivers.
All a part of the unit.
Yeah, it's a company-size unit. You know,
Mhm.
you have your truck drivers that drive the vehicles, and in place the launching systems and the radar systems and the antenna mast group for communications. Then you have to have a full system maintenance section with a full-on semi-truck full of parts and tools and all sorts of things to maintenance everything. And it just can't travel with the cavalry. So when I think about Ukraine, if you're going to emplace the Patriot missile system around Kyiv to protect the president of Ukraine, that's what it's going to be used for. But quite honestly, if they're firing in drones, they'd probably be better off with some Vulcan systems, you know, some M113s with the 20 mil on there, or maybe some Gepards, which I heard Germany sent them.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably a better system for that conflict, I would think.
So, Vic, you got any questions on that? Anything?
No, I was just thinking about the MLRS system, but I don't know if
That's field artillery.
Yeah.
That's different. That would be great over there. That would be well. They already sent the HIMAR.
Mm-hmm.
I think the MRLS has probably 2 or 3 times the range, maybe even more.
Yeah.
So,
That's a great system for over there.
I thought so.
Yeah.
so can an analogy be made, Jason, that is it like with this Patriot system, as far as the practicality of it, is it kind of like having a tank, and you're trying to use a tank to take out a sniper? Is that kind of?
Actually, that might actually work because you know the sniper can't shoot you in a tank, you know.
Right.
and,
but
you know, you turn on the white hot, you can see him. So no, that's probably an okay scenario. I would say the Patriot missile is overkill.
Okay.
For what they're seeing. I don't even think Russia's using their stealth equipment to save embarrassment, quite honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And if you did bring a Patriot missile system over there, I would think that you'd want to put it closer to the Polish border, just in case there's an overrunning. You want to get out of there.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want our secrets going.
Right.
You know.
So
That's how I think of it.
and so again, you know, Americans, Americans are concerned, or some Americans are concerned about whether or not we should support the Ukrainians. And then if you put the cost factor, in other words, you mentioned a few months ago, hey, using a Patriot missile to shoot out a drone.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they put the Patriot missile system over there to stop Vladimir Putin from even thinking about using tactical ballistic missiles.
Okay.
Because the Patriot missile system in the Gulf War was 73% effective against the Scud. I know we used to call it the Soviet constructed useless device. Right, but you know, I've trained against Scuds on scenarios and all sorts of things. They're fast-moving missiles. You know, they might not be hypersonic, but they're pretty darn close.
Yeah.
And you were 73% effective against them in the Gulf War. And I know in the 3 years that I was in Germany, the Patriot missile system that I was dealing with was upgraded 17 times. There were 17 different times when new communication processes came along, new equipment came along. They were constantly upgrading it, making it better. And then THAADs came along, and you know, I'm very confident in our air defense capabilities against TBMs. But I think that's why they probably sent it over there. Probably sent it over there just to deter any thoughts of
Using strategic
nuclear type.
Okay.
Yeah.
But one last thing before I move on. But it is not mobile. So that could be another issue, right?
You could drive it.
But it's not really.
Our best time of taking down the camouflage nets and lining up was probably somewhere around 2.5 hours. And then, you know, well, you have to have the briefing. You know, you're still going to have your briefings for your convoy briefings and all that stuff, where you're going. Then the travel, and then the emplacing. You know, you're looking at another 2 hours to emplace the system, and then once it's up, here come all the faults. You'll get a list of faults, things that broke, on the system before you can even turn it on and look. If you're lucky, you can still place it and watch your sector. It's a phased array radar, so it doesn't spin. It's just you looking at a sector. And then you hand that fault list to system maintenance, and they got to figure out when they can fix all the
So
stuff.
it's not a HIMARS.
My whole thing, exactly. My whole thing is when you send the Ukrainians over to Abernathy Park to train on the system, it was a 9-month period to be Patriot missile.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're just sending them over there to learn how to fight the air battle,
Mm-hmm.
that's the first month of training.
Mm-hmm.
So that might work,
Mm-hmm.
as long as you send the American servicemen or whoever who actually do the system maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you don't train them on the system maintenance,
Okay.
because that's a 9-month deal. 9 months. I just don't see sending them over there for that. Meanwhile, you could probably be trained on a good part in a couple of weeks.
Okay. All right. Let's take one of our breaks then.
Sure.
Okay. And so we left off then from with talking about the Patriot missile system, which going back was what you started with as far
Mm-hmm.
as your training.
Sure did.
Okay. All right. Okay, Jason, I'd like to digress back to the before you went into the Army. What did you leave anything particularly behind, like a girlfriend, a wife, anything like that?
No. I was single at the time.
Okay.
The sports I did in high school helped out. I did
Mhm.
cross country and I did wrestling. So when I went in, those were the perfect sports that you want to do in high school if you're going to be a soldier.
Okay.
That's for sure.
And why did you choose the branch, Army?
At the time, Army had the most jobs, and they had a great Army college fund.
Okay.
It was it's one of the highest college funds. I think it was somewhere around 40, and then I qualified for the Montgomery GI Bill
Mhm.
on top of that because my ASVAB scores were decent. So,
Okay.
so I did that.
Your initial point of entry, Tampa, MEPS.
Yes. Oh, and you know what? I remember I didn't want to join the Navy because for some reason I thought that they could put me on a submarine.
Mhm.
I had no clue that you had to actually volunteer for that.
Okay.
You know. So
Didn't want to go into the water. There's so many,
no,
what they call bubbleheads. There's so many bubbleheads
Right.
that in this area.
I had no clue that that you had to volunteer for that. I figured once you're in, you sign the papers. They put you where they want. So I was worried about that. So I went into the Army.
Okay. The type of training, you said that you had training in the Patriot system.
Mhm.
Any other training that you had at that point?
Just your basic training,
Okay.
right?
Okay. What was your most vivid memory of your time training or in school?
Okay, so like I said, I had about a year of drill sergeants. So the basic training drill sergeants were, of course, they've got their routine and they're rough and they're there. I had a ranger drill sergeant and a field artillery drill sergeant, and I could tell immediately the difference between them, the difference between who was more professional, and you could actually see a big difference. You know, people who go through ranger school,
Mhm.
what they know, what they have to add to the situation,
Mhm.
and so I got to see that. So I always thought, well, ranger school might be a good thing. Of course, when I found out that Patriot missile doesn't qualify for anything, you don't qualify for airborne, you don't qualify for, any of that. So I didn't realize that when I signed up, that's what I was signing up for. And when I went to Abernathy Park, or the Hill, they call it the Hill in El Paso, it was a whole new set of drill sergeants. It was a more relaxed environment, but they were still drill sergeants.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of a fun place. I had one drill sergeant who had a stutter. His name was Virgil Knight. I'll never forget him. He would stutter when he screamed at you, and you could not keep a straight face. It was over. You were doing push-ups. And quite honestly, you know, if it wasn't evening or morning formation, you didn't want to be around him because you were going to be doing push-ups. If this guy spoke to you, it was over.
Okay. Your first assignment, your first duty station,
Yeah.
after basic training was you had training
Well, AIT, which was on the hill.
on the hill that was in Texas, or
That's El Paso,
El
Texas.
Paso? Okay.
Great place.
Yeah.
Fun place for a young man or young woman, whatever, single people. You had Juarez, Mexico, which at the time was not that dangerous of a place. Of course, we were told, do not go into Juarez. And when you went into Juarez, of course, you ran into your drill sergeants. They were down there too. Anyway, I don't think I'd go to Juarez now. You know, now that it's 2023 and you hear a different story about some of those border towns. But back in 1993 and 92, Juarez was a fun place. It was a fun place, and it was pretty safe.
After Juarez, or after El Paso.
I went to 6th Battalion, 52nd Air Defense Artillery, I believe, and I was Echo. So I was Echo Battery. So yeah, I was a battery in the 6th of the 52nd Air Defense Artillery Battalion.
Okay.
Yes.
And where was that?
That was Shipton Concern, Kasern, and that's right outside of Ansbach, Germany,
Okay.
about 30 miles from Nuremberg.
Okay.
And I was there for 3 years.
Okay.
That's where my whole enlistment was pretty much Germany.
And Jason, were you, like it says, system mechanic then?
I was system mechanic for about a year and a half of that time, and they were having real problems with people becoming Table 4 and 8 and 12 qualified for the Patriot missile system. So they started digging into the system mechanics and making us fire control. So they switched me to that, and I was Table 12 qualified within a month, which really made the captain happy. So, and that's where I stayed for the remainder of the summer.
Being, Jason, this is not knowing anything about the Patriot missile system, very little about being a soldier. You being a mechanic was not like in civilian life being a grease monkey. It was very technical, right?
It was technical, but it was a little bit like that.
Yeah.
So nowadays you have the OBD2 ports or whatever you have on the on your car. You plug it in. The mechanic reads a bunch of fault diagnosis, I think is what you would call it. So Patriot missile system had that too. So when the system maintenance guy would get in there, there was a thing called the engagement control system. That's basically a van where the air battle is fought. When the system breaks, the fire control people leave, the system maintenance people go in, and we can operate that program to find the faults with the systems. So you start with a fault localization program, and you go through that, and it's like being a detective, and then you fault isolate. And you'll usually get a sheet that gives you 5 or 6 circuit boards, and depending on what you're doing. You know, if you're dealing with a radar or you're dealing with a launcher, to tell you which launcher, you go out there and you just start switching out circuit boards, which is pretty easy. Things like that. Wasn't much soldering, wasn't much actual breaking down and doing that. Sometimes we'd have to get in there and do the wire system. Sometimes on the old Patriot missile system, they had old CRTs. We didn't have flat screens yet, so you had to fix that too. So you had basically like fixing a TV with a cathode and the anode and the whole big thing. You pull it out, you got that too. It was very, very, a lot of information.
Challenging.
Yeah, it was interesting. It's funny that it was so effective, you know. that type of technology, you know.
It says the training on that system, digressing a little bit,
Mhm.
was it like 11 months?
So the whole thing was 11 months, basic in that. So it was
But
9 months. Yeah. So the fire control was uh, your first month.
Mhm.
You go in there and you learn how to use the system. It
Mhm.
has a little mapping system to
Mhm.
tell the missile where you're going to go. You learn things about no-fly zones and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And you learn about the capabilities of the missile and
Mhm.
what's going to be coming at you. That's called the fire control. And if you fail out of that, they make you a 16 Tango, which is a truck driver. If you make
That's what you do if you. That in Navy
Right.
they did the same thing.
yeah, so they first want to see if you can fight the system, of course. And if you make it through the fight, well then you're good to go to learn how to maintenance it. Now we had some people who, you know, if they messed up in the commo area, you know, they would be recycled. If they couldn't get through that 2 weeks of whatever, figuring this stuff out, then they were sent to 16 Tango.
Okay.
You know, which is
They give you like one chance. And
they give you 2 or 3 chances
Okay.
to get through, and
If not, you end up just driving.
yeah, and you have to pass every section. You have to pass the launcher section. You have to pass the radar section. You have to pass all this. That's why I'm thinking, you know, the Ukrainians. I think they're just going to do fire control and that's it. You know,
Yeah.
that's probably it.
And
Send 'em
so
back.
you have to be technically minded, right? You can't be just like
You have to know electronics. You don't have to know Kirchhoff's rules,
Mhm.
but V equals IR, some of that physics involved with it, how to find continuity and
Mhm.
wires and whatnot. You definitely need to learn all the areas of multimeter.
You at a technician level. You don't
Yeah.
have to be a electrical engineer. You don't have to.
You don't have to be an electrical
But you
engineer,
have
but
to-
you definitely need to be halfway to an electrician.
Okay. Okay.
That type of area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, before I get into your actual service experience, which I really can't wait to hear, so you learned the Patriot system. Now, were there any time during your what else during your Army service did you have to know about, and either dealing with either equipment?
Well, we still go to the range, you know, and we still. The Patriot missile system was so expensive. It's a battery size deal. You're not
Tell me about a
infantry.
battery for us civilians. What is?
Okay, so if you're infantry in the Army, you'll probably go to the field for 45 days. You'll come out, you'll take 2 weeks off, you'll recover, that's your recovery week. You get a little time to take the wife out and whatnot. Then you're going back to the field for another 45 days. The Patriot missile system is expensive. So it doesn't cost much to take a bunch of troops out to the woods. It does cost a lot of money to drive this system around, especially when you're in Germany,
Mhm.
because you're damaging villages that you're driving through. And, so you only take the Patriot missile system out 3 times a year, really. 2 weeks at a time, that's it. So that part of it was great, because the rest of the time you're in Germany,
Mhm.
you know, and you know, it's like you're in recovery
Yeah.
for 3 months, and then you're
Right.
going out again. The next quarter, when they get some money, they're going to be like, okay, let's go somewhere.
So it's very expensive to deploy.
Right. It's a very well. It was. a
As far
very-
as battalion size, does that mean the number of people they need to?
Right. I never fired a missile,
Mhm.
not even in training,
Mhm.
because that's how expensive it is.
Mhm.
You know, you were only firing a Patriot missile system if you were at White Sands.
Mhm.
You know, if you got deployed to White Sands for a year or 2 years, you might, if you were table 12 qualified or whatever, you might actually get out there and get to fire the actual system.
Mhm.
The rest of us guys, we never ever fired.
Because of the expense.
It's expensive.
Is there,
It's expensive.
when digressing, was there a lot of people needed to operate it? The second about a battalion, is that how many people have to be involved?
Okay, so every launcher is going to have a crew of 16 Tango to emplace the launcher. You probably need 3 guys to, when you initially drive on, 1 guy drives, of course, 2 guys jump out, and you have to set up these little outriggers that level it out. You have to level it out. You have to, you know, you have to sector it. You have to get a gunner's quadrant, the radar too. So there's a bunch of people in placing it. Those are the
Multiple,
16
how many people
Tangos.
altogether?
Oh, well,
to operate it?
3 for every launcher, and if you had 12 launchers, you know, it's 48, 50 people
Wow.
right there.
Wow.
Then you have the NCOs that make sure that they're doing it correctly.
Right.
And usually there's somebody out there with a timer because it's part of training, and they want to go over it because you have a certain amount of time that you have to put it up. That's part of their Table 8 and Table 12 qualifications. System maintenance guys, we usually just drive on and we wait for them to in place. We get a nice little area, at least when you're system maintenance. When you're fire control, I would drive the engagement control van, and I just drive that on, and we start basically putting up our camo nets. That's all we would do. Once the launchers are in place, we go inside and we start mapping out the area and getting up and running. Okay, and the radar guys, they're doing the gunner's quadrant, making sure that they're looking at the right sector and moving it to the right mills. And
So like 50 or 60 people, huh?
oh, sure, sure. And then, you know, you got your cantina, I guess.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically a mobile kitchen.
Yeah.
You know, they set up, and you've got other people that are setting up and erecting tents and whatnot. The whole thing takes about 2 or 3 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
And about, you said it before, 2 or 3 hours of breakdown.
Yeah, because
Okay.
you got to break down the camo nets.
Okay.
You got to put that up. You got to get all the wires and everything has to have a ground, you know, and the grounds have to be pushed in about 8 feet.
Yeah.
You know, it's
It's involved.
it's pretty big. Yes,
Now,
you're not going to go with the cavalry, that's
I know-
for sure.
Did you train when you were enlisted? Did you get training in any other?
So I fired expert on the squad automatic weapon. Of course, there was sergeant's time. We still did sergeant's time every Wednesday. You have that. So learn how to take in POWs, EOD, all sorts of stuff. All the regular Army training, medical training. All
So
sorts
general
of things.
Army training. Huh?
Yeah,
You've
general
had it all.
Army training.
Did you
but
get
we didn't qualify for Ranger School or
anything, Vic?
mountain warfare or any of that.
Vic, anything?
Oh, it sounds very interesting.
Did you? So that as far as a system for which you were a part of a battalion or whatever, that's about it as an enlisted.
Yes, and when we deploy, we don't deploy with the Army. Okay, so like the Gulf War, where Patriot missile did not follow tanks into 73 Easton. You know what I mean? Because it's just, it would be absurd, right? This thing's for taking down TBMs. It's not really. You could take down airplanes with it. Of course, the Air Force was always saying, "We'll take down the airplanes. You take down the missiles." They were afraid of us quite a bit. But you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So Patriot missile goes to an air base. You go to an air base. That's where we go every time we deploy, and that's why we went to Kobar Towers, Daharan. There's an air base there, and we set up. We watch the air base, and that's basically all
Your
Patriot
mission.
missile does.
That was your mission. It's
Right.
basically the mission. You guard facilities and people.
Right.
Concentrations of.
Yeah.
It's not something to move around as a tactical.
No. Now, they did have guys that were in these Humvees with Stinger missiles, and I think they were 14 Sierra MOS. Those are the type of guys that can actually be assigned to the 3rd ID or whoever as maybe a small platoon level air defense, you know, to go in with a couple of companies of infantrymen or cavalry, because you're in a Humvee and you can drive around and you can watch the skies and you can take out a helicopter.
Those are mobile. Those
yes,
are mobile.
extremely mobile. It's a Humvee with some Stingers, you know. So
Okay.
yeah.
Now, so you said you were in Germany for about 3 years.
Yeah.
What happened afterwards?
Well, in the meantime, we would deploy. You know, so I went to Daharan twice. One of the times that the first time I went there, it was still a combat zone, so they gave me a right shoulder patch. I got there 5 days before it ended. So
What ended?
the combat zone, it was no longer considered a combat zone. August 1993. The Gulf
So this
War.
was Gulf War.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I got there at the tail end of August '93, and It was no longer a combat zone. That was an easy deployment. Came back to Germany. We had a great time. A couple years later, we went back in 1996, and I was there for Khobar Towers.
Now, when you say Khobar Towers, and trying to be
Yeah.
look at, we talked about the timeliness as far as talking about the Patriot system of what's
Right.
going on now. Now with the Khobar Towers, what was Patrick Space Force Base? Were they involved in? Didn't they have a tragedy in Patrick Space Force Base? Didn't they have where 6 people died in it was a explosion in Khobar Towers?
There were Air Force there.
Right.
Whether they
Yes,
came
there-
from
there-
Patrick or...
there were 6 that came from Patrick.
Sure. I think there was somewhere around 19 to 23
Altogether.
airmen that were either
Yes,
injured
sir.
or killed
Yes,
in
sir.
the explosion.
Were
And,
you there for that time,
I
sir?
was.
Yeah.
I was there for the Khobar Towers bombing.
Mhm.
And I was married at the time, so my wife convinced me to stay in.
Mhm.
I was going on a run around that time, but I stayed in, and the bomb went off. Us Army guys we were on the other side of Khobar Towers. This phone would be a good representation of the whole compound. The bomb went off over here. The entrance was over here. So all your bunkers and entrance ways, you know how they make you move like a snake, till you get up there.
Yeah.
The guard towers and everything was over here.
Kind of like a gauntlet.
Right. Now, you had a section of maybe 70 yards and a wall that went all the way around, but it was very shallow here. And there was no buildings back here. There was no housing complexes. It was an open area. So they brought in the truck right here, as close as they could get it. There still was a wall there, but it took out the towers on this section. The Army guys, we were all here. All the air defense guys, we were up by that front gate. And Air Force was all the way around. And they were out here. There were volleyball courts here. There was the cafeteria. And Domino's Pizza was back in this area. So anybody who was in that area, and there was a club back there, where they served non-alcoholic beer and whatever. So you had a lot of people having a good time. They brought it in around 9:30, which is, they were obviously watching the activity of the base. They knew when people would be back there, and that's when they set it off.
Do you remember the day?
It was late June, maybe like the somewhere between the 24th and the 29th, something like that. My birthday's June 9th, so it was after that.
Late June.
Yeah, and I have a bunch of photographs, and I remember the Air Force colonel coming and asking the Army to be the pallbearers, because of course they don't want Air Force guys carrying Air Force guys out. So it was sad.
Okay.
Pretty sad. And I remember Connie Chung.
Connie Chung there.
Yeah, she came down. There was a bunch of FBI guys.
Okay. So this was it 96 you're talking about? We're at 96 now?
1996, yeah.
All right, tell me now, with your Army career, where do we go after that?
So I came back, I got out. I had my college money, I did my time, I was, felt patriotic about it. I started going to college. I decided I wanted to be an engineer, so I started go to college.
What type of engineer did you?
I went for aerospace. Actually, to tell you the truth, I wanted to draw cars for a living. I should have went to design school. Engineering school is very hard, extremely hard. So anyway, but I started on that path, and a couple years later, I decided I missed it. I went into the reserves.
Now we're talking 98. Around 98.
Yeah, so I was living in Ocala. I had a house, saved a lot of money while I was in the military, and when I came out, I was actually making money going to college, so got myself a house, decided to join the reserves, which they were paying 75% of your tuition. That was great. So I became a 63 Bravo, which is a light wheel mechanic for an MP company in Ocala. I do not remember the unit.
This is military police. Huh?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Bravo something, and it's the only time I've ever been Bravo. My whole career I've been Echo. Everywhere I went I was Echo. later on, a recruiter got with me for the National Guard. He said, you know, you have your AAA, you're at UF, you can come over here and be an officer. You can start officer career path with an AA. You just have to have your degree within a certain amount of time. So I went and did that. And I did OCS at Camp Landing.
Did you finish your degree at UF?
And I joined the cavalry.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I did not finish at UF. 2011 happened, or excuse me, 2001, September 11th, 2001, that happened. And things got a little crazy. Being in the National Guard, being an officer in the National Guard starts to get deployed all the time.
That's when it changed from Reserve Guard, changed from...
Right, so I was still at UF, and I remember specifically, I was in my junior year. I left, had to go to armor basic course.
Mm-hmm.
That took 3 or 4 months. It's the most fun I ever had.
As an officer?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So they made me Butterbar, and so once I finished OCS, I went to officer basic course, or I could not
And you
deploy.
went to OCS in Benning, right? Or-
No, I went to well, I did 2 weeks in Benning,
Okay.
but the program is National Guard, so it's 1 week in a month
Mm-hmm.
and 2 weeks a year, and it lasts a year and a half. That happened at Camp Blanding. Okay,
Okay.
and we did 2 weeks at Benning.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So then
So-
that was kind of like a knife and fork school?
Hmm?
Kind of like a knife and fork school?
I guess so.
Yeah.
Just green to gold,
Yeah.
and that was funny too because we had black hats.
Uh-huh.
You know, so they like to put in Bubba teeth. Remember the Bubba teeth back then? You know, just came out. You could order Bubba teeth. You know, and they would ask you questions.
Okay.
It's terrible. It was a lot of fun.
So then that was all until like an hour and a half. I mean, a year and a half, huh?
It was a year and a half. I was finishing up school. I had to go to Afghanistan, so they
So you were finishing up your bachelor's?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was
Yeah.
finishing up my bachelor's. I had to go to Armor Basic course. Then I went to Scout Leaders course, and then I was picked up for Afghanistan, and we started in April. And trained up
April what year?
2005.
Okay.
Okay, so from basically the end of or the beginning of 2004 all the way to nearly 2007,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't allowed to go back to college.
Mm-hmm.
You see, because you finish up your basic course, then you let's see, the basic course started in May and ended in September. So you lost your spring semester, you lost your summer, and you lost your fall
Mhm.
because it took it all.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went to Scout Leaders course, and then I was thinking about, well, okay, let me finish this degree. That January I was told, okay, you're going to Afghanistan, we're going to start in March. So there goes your next 2005, that's your spring semester.
Mm-hmm.
Then you spent a year in Afghanistan. You didn't get back till July 2006,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have to break down and recover, and you have to go through all that.
Mm-hmm.
So I really didn't get released from that till about October. And
Oh, what year?
and I want to make this a point because this is really dangerous
Yeah.
for people who join the National Guard or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Universities don't care. By the time I got back to UF 2 years later, they said, we have changed our curriculum and your classes no longer count. You pretty much have to start over. You know,
Besides your first
you can
year.
keep you can keep your statics. You got an A in statics and dynamics, whatever. But we want you to take, and they had a whole list of classes that they wanted me to take over again. And I was like, this is a mess.
Mm-hmm.
So I called my congressman. I called the military justice boards. Nobody cared.
Nobody cared.
Nobody cared.
You got nowhere with that.
Nobody cared. There is no protection from servicemen in the National Guard
As
who
far as
leave.
education, getting a degree,
Right.
no protection.
There's no protection.
There is with an employer, but not with a.
Right.
And even then, I'm not sure how effective it would be if it was a small employer. But anyway,
If it's a state employer, you're fine.
yeah,
You know, but there is absolutely no protection for you while you're trying to get educated.
okay,
So this became a real problem because now, you know, I've got the Army looking at me and saying, "Hey, we gave you 4 years."
yeah,
Well, yeah, you took 2 years of those with
Right.
the deployment, and now I have to start over again
Right.
with my 4-year degree.
right,
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then I got injured in Afghanistan, so I went on to med hold, and I said, "Well, great. Now I'm on med hold, so now I can go to college." No,
no,
you were not allowed to go to college while you were on med hold. George W. Bush, Jr. Yeah, I got on this program called HBCBO or something out of Orlando, Florida, which is they basically they pay you like a military guy. You're paid like you're active duty. They want you to go to your local unit and work there, and you are not allowed to go to college. And you
So
go to
you work
your
as you're like a full-time National Guard.
right. So yeah, so you get to live back in Ocala. You know, I don't have to be on base with the third ID or something.
Right.
I get brought back here. I get to live in my house. I work at a National Guard unit, and I have to go see the doctor, and do my physical therapy until I get off. But I'm not allowed to go to college. And I tried. I tried to go to college. They tried to give me an Article 15.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, by that time, I had already passed the time allotted to get my degree. And so they started looking at me and saying, "Okay, well, we're going to pass you over. Get passed over again. We're going to kick you out."
Did they give you more time?
I explained my situation to them, and they said, "Okay." In any case, I went to Kuwait because they said, "Well, we'll not pass you over. You go to Kuwait deployment." They passed me over while I was on the
Still?
yeah. So when I came out, they were basically like, "Okay, that's we'll see you later," and I was like, "Well, let me go to college." So I called up UCF. I said, "Hey, UF isn't going to take their own credits. Will you take them?" They were like, "Yes, you can come here. You can get an education minor. We'll throw a couple classes together for physical science, and you'll have a concentration in general engineering, physical science, and an education minor, and you'll be well on your way." And I was in and out of there in a year.
So it really, Jason, involved negotiation.
Yeah.
Okay. My older son, it's he was mechanical. Now he's material engineer.
Yeah.
That's where he got his master's from. But so if you just digress back to Afghanistan,
Sure.
Tell me what memories for a civilian, and a young person, what memories did you have of Afghanistan since you were in the thick of it? I
Busy.
mean, what,
We were there in the busy time, 05, 06. This was the, the story of Lone Survivor was going on at that time. It was action-packed. I think my OER says 500 combat missions. We were convoy escort. I had more than 150 patrols. And I had probably about 7 long-range missions going from Kabul to Kandahar or to a place called Wama, which is left of Assadabad. And we saw action all the time. I probably saw action about 9 times. And that's where I got my cab.
And Jason, did you
Yeah.
say, what was your feelings on that? In other words, did it seem like the Army was concerned about their troops to where there were safeguards taken, and was that acceptable as far as taking care of?
Oh, yeah. Well, when we got there, we were in greenbacks, light-skinned Humvees. And we were kind of worried. We were thinking about making our own armor somehow. And within a month, we were in the MM-14s, the first edition Humvees that were armored.
Okay.
Now, they broke all the time because they didn't have the proper suspension for that extra weight. You went from 6,000 pounds to about 10,000 pounds. And when you went off-road in them, they broke a lot. You know, so my first long-range mission was going through the Khyber Pass down to Jalalabad, to go up to Asadabad, and then a certain location where equipment was left and people needed to be transported out of that area, and we were attacked there. And you really saw, and this is probably the first time the enemy got to see the difference between these up-armored Humvees. I wouldn't be surprised if we were one of the first ones attacked with these up-armored Humvees, because we weren't in light skins anymore. And what the enemy would try to do, there was one road in to Camp J Blessing from Afghanistan. So one road in, one road out. So they watch you come in. They won't attack you, but they know you got to go out. You know, so that's when they put up all their IEDs. The enemy's very smart. They set them off on the way back. They're trying to blow you off the cliffs. If you could actually see these roads, they're about 7 to 10 feet wide, and it's a drop off. You know, so they're pretty smart. They're not going to fight with armed U.S. military guys with Mark 19s and 50 cals on top of their machines. They're just going to blow you off. Try to blow you off the cliff, you know, and they'll get you down there.
Surprise attack type ambush and stuff.
Right, and they might not even attack you then. They'll probably watch the platoon. If you want to go down there and save your friends, that's a good time to attack. You know, they're very smart. Very smart.
So
they know what they're doing.
Going to the indigenous, the people there, did you think real quick that really the way that we were handling it, given the circumstances, do you think that was appropriate as far as did it motivate you or demotivate you?
No. I don't know what the people are thinking in the White House. I really don't. But they tell us what they think we need to hear. They say, okay, we're going to make this like America. We're going to put in a Congress and possible Senate, and you know, and I forget who the leader was. Kazan, maybe. Forget what his name was. The
Karzai,
or yeah. And I remember they had female. It was in the news. You know, you'd have females in the Congress, which of course probably angered most of the Afghan people. They're very male dominated.
Even the what do they have? What's the what do they have over there?
It's more of a liberal culture than than what I saw in Kuwait or Iraq. Actually, Kuwait City was the most liberal. Females didn't have the garb on, and they're driving around in Porsches, and you know, it's different. Iraq is quite a bit different. In Afghanistan, they do have the burqa. They look like, you know, like it's more strict at the time. But then you drive out to the college and you see any woman who's not married is, you know, she's in jeans and a shirt just like America. You know, and there were a lot of Bedouin there, so everybody's sort of.
The Bedouins are like gypsies, right?
Kind of, you know. They move. They move to Pakistan and then they come back wherever they can make money, and that's a problem in Afghanistan because there's a lack of patriotism. You know what I mean? I mean, if you think about Afghanistan against Russia, this was their chance. This was their America chance. You know, we got rid of the British. Here they are getting rid of the Russians. You know, they got the Stinger missile. They're doing that. Ahmed Shah Massoud was the leader, former engineer. You know, and he's got the Mujahideen. These people are behind him. They're getting rid of the Russians. You know, and then what happened? You know. Some guy got in there with a camera and killed him, you know, a bomb blast, and they just kind of lost their forefathers right there. You know, so Afghanistan is, you got a lot of people who want to love their country, and they want freedom, and they want those things, but they just have no clue and we didn't help.
Have no clue on how to do it.
Yeah, and us setting up a Congress.
So there's nothing organic as far as them coming up with
Yeah.
democracy and
Right. They want it. It's just they don't know how to go about it, and the problem is, I dare say, it's Islam.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, over here we had problems too, but we separated church and state.
Mm-hmm.
You're never going to set up America without a church and state.
Mm-hmm.
We say this to the people at home when we create these wars. We're going to set up a democracy, but if you're not going to separate church and state, any imam can get up in the morning and say, you know what Allah told me last night? He said,
Okay.
you know, this is the way it is.
That-
And I didn't want to really
very
go in that
insightful.
direction.
Very insightful.
Right, but it's very hard to have an America without that church and state.
Mm-hmm.
And
So you're saying that, our heart was in the right place. It just,
well,
we had the same problem in Iraq. You can't, you can't insert democracy like you insert a component into a computer. It just doesn't.
you saw what happened when the Taliban just took over. People hanging off of airplanes and whatnot. They all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, please don't leave America, please. It's not what we want, but it's better than what's coming."
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that is people not having an idea of being a patriot. And I'll tell you, one of the major
being
problems,
loving your country,
loving your country,
and being
yeah.
able and sacrificing.
Right. Mark Twain said, if you're going to be a patriot, you got to love your country. You don't have to love your government. And that's kind of what I see over there. And what America does is we go in and we set up the clinics and we help the schools and we clean this up and we clean that
Infrastructure.
up. And the bleeding heart stuff,
And
right?
infrastructure. You get everything.
Right, we help with some roads here or whatever. Actually, there was more Chinese over there doing roads and bridges than anything I ever saw.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the Belts and Roads Initiative.
Mm-hmm.
But what I see is, I see helping mothers and women and children. I don't see helping men. Okay? So,
And it's a male-dominated society.
right. So let me put it to you this way. We would drive down the street and I would see these guys squatted on rock walls. And I called them the scarecrows, because that's what they look like to me. They're just sitting there waiting for somebody to come along and ask them to do some work for the day. The Afghan National Army, when I was there, went on strike. They wanted $7 a week.
Went on strike.
They went on strike.
An army?
Yeah, the Army went on strike. They were getting paid $6 a week, and they wanted $1 a day. That's $365 a year. 10 years, that's $3,600, whatever. $7,000 for a career. A father's dowry for his daughter is anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000. Exactly when are you going to get married if you're a single man in Afghanistan, even if you have a job? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when the Taliban comes along and they say, you take this gun and you fight for us, we'll give you a wife and a house, who are you going to fight for?
Yeah. So you're saying, Jason, if I
Silly.
interpret it,
They need jobs. They need industry.
this concept
That's what
and
they need.
principles of democracy,
Right.
free enterprise,
Right.
could not be instilled in Afghanistan as well as other places because the culture wouldn't allow it.
Well, we don't have the right plan. Saving schools and giving women's rights and things of that's not the right plan.
Mm-hmm.
The right plan is to bring some industry in there.
Mm-hmm.
The right plan is to take all the jobs out of China and stick them in Afghanistan. There's your labor force.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? If people have enough money, these men have enough money to pay the father's dowry and buy a house and set up his familyhood, he's not going to care about joining the Taliban. Are you kidding? He doesn't want that. Those people don't want that. They do it because they're never going to get married
My
under Karzai.
Army officer brother told me
That's
that,
what I saw.
He told me that the idea that the first thing that a woman or a man or a woman wants before they start getting these higher order thoughts and expressions for something outside themselves. They want to be fed, and they want their basic needs taken care of. And when
Right.
I'm sitting here, the basic needs weren't taken care of.
No, not for the men.
Okay. Which
For-
was
for-
which is
for-
in a male-dominated society.
Right. For America, for CNN, for people back home to support it and feel good, that's what we're doing. But when it comes to actually pouring some money, I mean, you could look at Afghanistan, you could just see the industry there. I mean, that the mountains are red with copper and iron and green, and you know what I mean? And before the Taliban was there in the before the Russians, there was a great wine industry in Afghanistan. Incredible wines were made there, and we didn't do anything for helping that aspect.
It is very insightful, and I
Right.
appreciate it.
Yeah. The
so-
men need to work. Then you can have patriots.
So we're gonna take another break.
Yeah.
And then come back, and then what I plan on doing is going into Iraq. Your
Sure.
experience of Iraq.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Where are we at?
All right, Jason. Like we've talked about Afghanistan, which I think found very, very interesting. On now, after you got served in Afghanistan, tell me what happened. I mean, what did?
I remember the date. It was February 27th, 2006. We had a Humvee rollover. We were doing a patrol. It was the monsoon season, rainy season. In Kabul, where we were, in this neighborhood, they had dug a deep trench. Not, of course, to hurt anybody. They were just trying to bury their power lines. They were going to put their power lines underground. They hadn't done that yet. And we were driving through a muddy area of town. And so we were flooring it. We were going as fast as we could with our up-armored Humvees. And we went in the ditch. And my gunner went flying. I separated one shoulder, tore a rotator on the other, fractured my spine. And my gunner, my driver, got a hernia trying to step on the brake. He was medevaced. Pretty severe hernia. Anyway, came back. I went to sick call the next day. Complained about it, got my LOD, and didn't really know anything. Didn't take any x-rays or whatever, but I did get some painkillers. So they took me off duty for a while. I was going on leave in like 3 days. So I didn't want to mess that up. I didn't want them to have to fly me to Landstuhl, Germany, or do anything like that. And I didn't want my platoon to know about it, because the National Guard is not really, they're not set up for year-long deployments, you know, and then you've got a 4-month train-up. So you're taking these guys who are weekend warriors, and you're taking them away from their families for a year and a half, you know, and they're not set up for it. And I saw problems with psychological problems. I saw soldiers drawing down on other soldiers out of frustration.
Drawing down.
Yeah, they were carrying live ammo. So when they got angry and things of that nature, they'd lose it. You know, these National Guard, man, you know, after about 6 months, things start to come apart at the seams a little bit, you know. And as a leader, you have to correct that. You have to get on it with the discipline and such. I lost my senior scout to back injury. That was pretty important. I lost my platoon sergeant. I'm not going to say why, but I lost him. So it was me and a bunch of junior NCOs running my platoon.
And most of the NCOs were these
They were buck
weekend
sergeants.
warriors.
Yeah, buck sergeants. I had one staff sergeant, but he was under attack from platoon sergeants in other platoons because they didn't like him. So you know, there's all this drama.
The dynamics of it were just.
Yeah, there's 7 platoons, and you know, a couple of platoons like each other, and a couple of platoons don't. And
Did you have racial thing going on?
no racial, nothing racial, but just power struggles.
Yeah.
Power struggles. I mean,
Politics.
Our platoon went out, and we got caps right off the bat. You know, and then that was a big jealousy issue for a bunch of other platoons that weren't seeing any action. They were trying to create their own action. There was one platoon leader that his nickname around the base was Contact 6. You know, because every time he went out, it's contact. You know, they were like, no, we've got you on the flare. We see there's no contact. You know, and everybody started calling him Contact 6. He was finally relieved, and yeah. Because he wanted a cap, you know, wanted to get a Bronze Star or something, you know. So you had all this going on, and when I actually messed myself up really bad, I just said, you know what? I went home on leave. I jumped in bed. I was in bed for.
This is in Afghanistan with the.
When I got to fly home to Florida, and I basically stayed in bed for about a week and a half until I could move again comfortably, and then you know I got ready. Put on my gear and went back and finished the deployment.
Was that atypical?
And I was stupid enough.
Was that atypical for somebody like you that had that experience to have to go back?
Well, if I left, we had already lost the platoon sergeant and we had already lost our senior scout. I was under the fear that my staff sergeant and my buck sergeant and just about everybody else would be completely, you know, Article 15s out of wherever, just from people making up stuff.
Yeah.
And I lost one. I lost the buck sergeant.
So you felt the loyalty,
right. And plus, who knows? My whole second platoon probably picked apart and thrown into other platoons. You know, which is just more work for everybody.
Yeah.
Because you got one less platoon.
Yeah.
You know? So there was a lot of that going on. So I was like, well, forget it. I'm not leaving this deployment. I'm going back and I'm finishing. And so that's what I did. And I said, well, I'll go on Met Hold after. You know, and that's what I did. Now I did the spur ride while I was over there, and that was pretty stupid.
The spur ride?
So the spur ride is where you get your silver spurs if you're a cavalryman, and it's basically 1 day of Ranger School, or a hell day. And like I said, I was injured, and I didn't even realize that my spine was fractured. But I went and did that, and that was a huge mistake. Huge mistake. I had pretty much the last month of the deployment. I was in incredible pain, and we were training the new guys coming in. Thank God for that.
So what time was this? Like, are we still in 2006 or?
Yeah, we're talking 2006. We're talking. I did the spur ride in May. We were leaving in early July, so. The rest of May and the rest of June, I was in incredible pain. I came back. I immediately got on a Med Hold program, CBHCO, which was out of Orlando, Florida. And I was on that all the way till 2008. I wasn't allowed to go to college, whatever.
In
any case.
2008, okay.
Yeah.
And so, tell me now, you have in your background Iraq 2010. Tell me, does your service continue?
Yeah, so when I got off of Med Hold finally, like I said, they brought me in. They said, "Listen, we're passing you over, and we're gonna just edge you out of the military." I was offered a medical discharge in CVHCO. I think they were talking 20%. I said, "No, I'm gonna finish," you know, because I was at 14, 15 years. It's like, I'm going to finish. I'm just going to finish, and that's going to be that. And if I don't make major or whatever, I don't care.
Yeah.
If I don't make captain, I don't care.
Yeah.
I just want to finish. So I came back, and I talked to the brigade commanders, and they were basically like, listen, if you go to Kuwait with us, we'll give you an extra couple of years to get your degree. They did not. They did not. They passed me over while I was over there. And basically got brushed off. So March 31st, 2011, I think, when we came back from Kuwait, Iraq, I was, you know, given the cold shoulder. Okay, that's it, you're done. And you know, it's sad, but I don't really regret it. You know, I had a good time the whole time.
I want to have the reflections, Jason, a little late, just a few minutes.
Right.
But tell me about your service in Iraq.
Huh? So Kuwait, Iraq. We were right on the border. I was in Camp Buehring, and that was fun. that was just basically, I was a contract officer representative. I was brigade assistant S4 for a while. I helped with the unit mobilization, taking the Florida National Guard over to Kuwait, Iraq. I think it was first of the 124th, but I was assigned to the Cav Echo, and that was a lot of fun.
Okay.
It was a lot of fun at Camp Buring. I got to see. I had
How
a car
How long was
given to me, and I was to go around and make sure that money was being spent wisely. So I got to drive all
So
over.
you got into like the financial management type.
Right, a contract officer representative. So I
Do
had
you ever
an
work, deal with
office.
defense contract audit?
Yeah, I would go and I would check on defense contractors, various ones.
Yeah.
Some silly like fire extinguishers, and some that actually had maintenance tents, and I
Yeah.
would go through and make sure they had all the tools and
Yeah.
stuff and all sorts of stuff. But I was in and out of Iraq and Kuwait, and I was in Kuwait City a lot. And boy, what a place!
Yeah, pretty dynamic. Huh?
Yeah, it's very interesting, and it's kind of cool because when I was in Dhahran, I saw a whole different part of Saudi Arabia. I was a couple 100 miles south of Kuwait City, and that's a total different feeling on the Persian Gulf down there, as it is up in Kuwait City. Kuwait is a lot. It's almost a true free democracy. It
Okay.
really is. And I'm sure Qatar and Bahrain, and what's the other one where they're building all those giant buildings?
Dubai.
Dubai, yeah, that's probably more of that type of feeling.
So we come.
Yeah.
So how long were you involved in Iraq, Kuwait?
So I think the deployment was somewhere around 9 months, and then it was a 3-month train-up.
So what? Tell me what happened afterwards. Yeah, are we towards the end of your service? Active
Yes.
service?
So as soon as we got back, we did the regular recovery stuff that you do, the psychological counseling and the family counseling, and then basically they're like, okay, well, we're releasing you.
So do you recall the day your service ended?
Yeah, and I pretty much just got a phone call.
Really?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
And were you back in Ocala?
I had moved to Cocoa,
Okay.
so I got rid of the house in Ocala and I'd moved down to Cocoa.
Okay.
And I've been here ever since.
Okay.
And it was better. I had to because UCF said they would take my credits. So
Pick that back up.
yeah. So basically, when we got back, I was already set to go to UCF and finish up, and so didn't miss a beat. Just went right into college and I finished my degree a couple years later.
Did you have a wife at that time?
No.
No. Okay. Was it hard? I'm talking to like pretty much a guardsman, but was it hard to readjust to civilian life?
Civilian life changes,
Yeah.
over the years. It was hard to be a civilian in the 90s. I enjoyed the military, but I was young. So this last bout, after the med hold and after all the stuff and after being told not to get your degree or you can't and then being passed over.
Yeah.
No, I was happy to be a civilian again, I think. It was the politics of it I was done with.
Were you able, Jason, as far as the silver lining or whatever you want to call it, was the government paid for you then to get what you needed to get? Was that part of it okay? In other words, the GI Bill and you had the Montgomery GI Bill and okay.
I don't regret my service.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't regret going to Afghanistan. I loved that place. I really did. I don't regret going to Camp Buring, even though I was passed over. I enjoyed that experience. It was an interesting place.
Did you have any friendships in service?
Sure, and I still do.
You do.
My intelligence officer. Here's a funny story. I won't say what his name is because I don't know if he wants to be on this interview, but especially with the story that I have. Early morning, since I was in engineering school, the captain and the battalion commander had issued that I would be the guy who goes out and checks out new routes, especially when it comes to bridges, just to see what the bridge can take. Can it take certain trucks or whatever, how wide it is, all that stuff. They wanted me to do it because I was in engineering school. So we were on a mission at 5:30 in the morning, and we picked up the interpreter, and there was this real squirrely medic guy. He didn't like me very much, and I didn't like him either. He was always scared all the time, and he was always worried about himself, and he was always talking about that. Anyway, he was in my Humvee behind me. I was in the commander's chair, and the intelligence officer, who I'll just call CJ, was behind me, and he's a very cheerful person, you know. Upbeat. And the medic was behind me.
Upbeat, positive.
Right, upbeat, positive. He knows his job very well. Great guy.
Yeah.
We head out. We get to the bridge. I get out. I'm doing inspections on it. I'm looking for you know, cracks and arches and the angles and this, that, and the dimensions and what it's made of and what type of material. And I'm going through this. I've made myself my own little sheet, you know, so that I could actually calculate some stresses. Anyway, the medic didn't want to sit behind me anymore, and he switched out with the interpreter, which was better anyway, because I should have an interpreter right next to me.
Yeah.
But I was in a foul mood, and I got back into the Humvee, and my friend CJ said, there was fresh snow on the ground, and he was just like, look at this beautiful country. Afghanistan is just so beautiful. Look at the snow, how it just sits. And I was just like, you know, CJ, just wait till it melts and you see all the cracked needles and the feces everywhere and the trash, you know. I was just in a foul mood. I thought Afghanistan was actually a beautiful country, but there was a lot of trash.
He was still at half full and you're at half empty.
Right, well, yeah, and you know, when you walk down into a riverbed, and let me tell you, when you see third world country and the trash, you know, the blue bags and the black bags, and that's basically what I just got out of.
I'm going to have to stop right now because I
don't
got to change the battery.
Okay. Okay, so there was a time when in Afghanistan at Task Force Phoenix, we got a mission, and I was to evaluate some bridges on a route just to see what could go over them. And so I had a medic behind me, and I had CJ in the driver's side rear, and I had my driver and my gunner, and we headed out. We got to the location. I did an evaluation of the bridge, and I had to get down into a river, and there's a lot of trash down there, you know, in Afghanistan. Anyway, we had fresh snow. It was beautiful out, and when I got back in, but I was still in a foul mood, I sat down, and I had no idea that the Afghan interpreter was behind me. I thought it was a medic. And CJ said something like, you know, it's beautiful out here. You know, just look at the snow and the way it's fallen. And I was just like, you know, just wait till it melts and you see nothing but cracked needles and trash everywhere, you know. And so CJ, knowing that the interpreter was there, was covering up for me a little bit, and I didn't realize that. He was just like, well, you know, a lot of people say the Russians did a lot of that. And then I got really angry, and I said, CJ, you know, that's what they say, isn't it? They just want to blame it on somebody, don't they? Let me tell you something. It wasn't the Russians. It wasn't the British. It wasn't Alexander the goddamn Great. This place was a shithole 4,000 years ago, and guess what? It's a shithole now, and guess what? 1,000 years, it's going to be a shithole. And I turn around, and the interpreter's there, and I'm just like, oh, God, please. And, you know, and so the interpreter takes offense naturally. And, you know, he steps up and wants to say something, and he's just like, well, you know, I'm a doctor, and I actually have a medical degree, and the only job that I can get is this one, where I interpret for you guys, you know, because that's what we're living in here. You know, we got no help. And I turned around and I said, you know, that's because you got no patriots. You guys are nothing but a bunch of Bedouins. You know, you're running around. Nobody loves each other. You even go to the rich part of town, and they've got these big fancy houses, and what do? They put a wall up. They don't put a wall up around the neighborhood. They put up a wall up in between each other. You guys, you all hate each other, you know? Then I started feeling pretty good. You know, got it off my chest. And, you know, we get back to the base, and the interpreter jumps out and runs away. I was like, hey, man, have a nice day. It's just like, you know, later on, CJ was just like, you're going to hear from this one. This is going to come back and catch you. Yeah, I did. I did. And I don't blame him.
Yeah.
You know, but foot and mouth.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my Afghanistan
And
story.
you're sticking to it.
Yeah, I'm sticking to it.
But you started about the problem, about the lack of patriotism and stuff like that.
Right. Right.
How did the service, and it's kind of, this is probably an apropos question, how did the service, and I'm talking about the collective, your whole service experience, how did it affect the way you relate to others?
Well, tact is always something that you're definitely going to learn in the military. Respect for others and respect for, you know, there's a book in the Bible called Amos. And Amos is an interesting book, and most conservatives don't like that book because it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hard lesson to learn. For instance, our symbol of justice is a woman with a sword and a scale.
Yes.
The symbol in the book of Amos is a river of mercy.
A river of mercy?
Yeah, and the idea behind the river of mercy is not one of us. It's impossible for any of us to judge anyone else. We don't have the authority, and we don't have the ability. We just flat out don't have the ability. So when you talk to people, and when you go to all these different cultures and these and the people that you deal with in the military, the respect and the dignity that you need to have until you find out who that person is, at least, is always there. You know, and that's something that you might not know anything about the book of Amos, but from a standpoint, whenever I deal with anybody initially in the military at any time, there's a certain amount of respect and dignity, unless you're dealing with some contractor who they're getting paid money and they can't get fired and they know it.
Yeah.
They're jerks.
Yeah.
But most people, especially people with rank, have that dignity. Whether it's a colonel speaking to a private, you know, it's there, and that's a great lesson.
Thank you for your insight. Any other ways that, as far as relating to others, anything, and that's powerful what you just described. I'm not going to. I mean, it's powerful.
Well, thanks. Well, I would say that there's also a huge difference between people who get PTSD and people who can deal with combat, whether it's just depression. I've seen a lot of gung-ho people, you know, come out of a situation like this. You know what I mean? And certain types of people can just deal with combat well, and certain types cannot now. But everybody seems to go into it with good cheer.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
like we're in it together.
Mm-hmm.
One more time in the breach, young man. You know, but it's the way they come out of it.
So I don't know
See a
about
difference.
about Vic's experience, but I've never been in combat, so I'm going to have to say I don't know, you know what I mean?
You still put on your uniform, and putting on your uniform is presenting a defense.
Right.
And that's important.
Right.
You know, even though the Navy hasn't been in a battle in I don't know how long, I don't know where we would be in this world without a Navy.
I appreciate
without
that.
the rest of the countries.
Appreciate that, but I've never.
Yeah, but without the rest of the countries knowing that we
would
could touch them at any time.
I would say, Jason, myself,
You know what I
and most of the people that I know that I've come to meet that were veterans,
Yeah.
they were not tried. They were never put into that.
Right.
So I respect, I respect your service, and I respect the way you look at it. But I'm saying that me not being in that situation, that I can't really say how I would react. I'm just trying to be honest.
Sure. And I didn't know how I would react.
Yeah.
You know, it was a little bit depressing for me.
Yeah.
Leaving my platoon leader's life. I enjoyed it. But at the same time, you know, I mean, I see the absolute need for an Air Force and a Navy. It takes a load off the Marines and the Army when other countries don't want to battle us.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons.
Did you join any veterans organizations?
Just the DAV.
How about the? Tell me.
Once I got off med hold, they did offer me a medical retirement. I did not take it. I wanted to stay in. Then when I didn't get it, now obviously, okay, well now I want my shoulders to be checked out again. That
you battling?
has been absolutely impossible.
You're battling with it.
I don't know how it works. You know, my friend CJ does. He told me to join the DAV. When I joined the DAV, immediately got a claim approved for my shoulders, based on the LOD, and my fractured spine. I was told by the VA, "There's nothing wrong with you for years now." I got in a vehicle accident last year, and I was taken to Sanford Hospital, and they found a fractured spine, old injury. Brought that up to the VA again, so now we're discussing that.
So I mean, I know I'm biased, but it doesn't get any better than these guys. I mean, these guys are good.
DAV's great.
Yeah.
You know, and I've talked to a lot of other people and dealt with a lot of other people. The DAV get it done.
Yeah.
They get it done.
They're very, very good. They're
Yeah,
integral to
Yeah.
the stature of this
Right.
center. I mean, there's, you know, their core. You know.
Yeah.
So I've got about 7 more questions. Is there
Sure.
anything you've always wanted to share about your service or veteran experience that you never have? Anything that you wanted to share about it?
Well, if I ever wrote a book, Virgil Knight's going to be page 1.
Okay. Can you tell us?
That guy's too funny.
Is that he's the
He's the
drill
stuttering
instructor?
drill sergeant. And I will never forget this. We were sitting in evening formation, and he came out, and he's just like, "Privates, I'm goddamn pissed off at all the pizza coming in this place." You know, and oh my gosh, we're just sitting there trying to keep it together. Goddamn, Private, we're not going to be, you know, and right as he said that, here comes a guy with about 4 or 5 pizzas stacked up. He turns around. He's just looking at him. He's just like, "Somebody pay for these pizzas." You know, it's just, oh man. I don't think any of us were standing. None of us. It was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. And then, of course, the black hats with the Bubba teeth while I was in OCS, they were fun too.
The Bubba teeth?
Yeah, they bought these Bubba teeth, one of them, and he would stick it in and he'd start asking us questions, you know. And that was good times too.
And and now if you laughed, you had to do push-ups? Is that the...
You weren't getting through it.
No.
You weren't getting through it. And then,
so you're doing push-ups.
And then, of course, when you're in OCS, they pick out an XO and a commander for the next drill, all right? And it's their job to put together the plan, write the plan, and all the stuff that we're going to do and whatnot, and they're constant communication. Well, one of them, of course, they did a spell check, but spell check didn't pick this out. They spelled desert. So when we showed up there, you know, they came out, of course, and you know, and they were just like, "We have a special request that was given to us. Your commander and your XO want to set you up for success. They said that you guys could really deserve some desert." And you know, the XO's like, "This dessert." And he goes, No. You did not spell dessert. You spelled desert. So we have set it up for you, candidates. Come on over and get your desert. You know, and they brought us out to the lake, and of course there was a mermaid out there, and we had to crawl up and kiss the mermaid and crawl through our desert. Yeah, that was, and then we were given that, of course, after dinner. You know, about a quarter mile of desert.
Are there some
Good times.
life lessons that you got from military service that if I don't know if you ever thought about it, that if you weren't in the military you wouldn't have got the life lessons?
It's just, you consider people's backgrounds, you know, lesson amos, you know. Don't judge.
I'm going to read that. I'm going to
Yeah.
read that.
Don't judge.
That
River of
chapter.
Mercy.
I'm going to read that book now.
Yeah, it's a hard lesson.
Yeah.
It's a hard lesson, but I've seen it come true.
How has the military service impacted your feelings about war in the military in general? Impact your feelings about war in the military in general.
Well, I love the military, and I love a lot about it. What I don't like is, I hate to say it, but the White House and their. I understand that they're at that level, and I don't see the problems that they see. But what I see is, it's almost like they're not hiring historians or people who actually know what they're doing when they're talking about these countries and how to make actual change. You would love to see changes in Afghanistan. I hear from the veterans, and they saw the way that we left, and they were disgusted by it. We've all put a lot of time into Afghanistan, and we know that there's an Afghanistan out there that could work. You know, this is the area of the Mujahideen. You know, these were the guys that took on the Russians. They fought for freedom. It's there. Even though I've made quibs about patriotism and whatnot, it's there. It has a chance. But our direction in Afghanistan was completely the wrong direction.
The policy, this wasn't.
It's not strong enough.
Yeah.
It wasn't strong enough. And it just seems like they wanted to pray to the people back home. They wanted to make your hearts bleed so that you support the administration and where it's going, but they really had no clue of what they were doing.
No, so real quick,
Right.
no, real quick, the end in mind. They did not have an end in mind.
Right, and it just wasn't one administration. It was all of them. You know, I think Condoleezza Rice went over there on some mission to show America how they were burning poppy fields. You know, and I was told that that they just went from poppy field to poppy field, and this one was owned by this warlord, and then they came across this independent farmer, and they said, well, let's burn his field. It doesn't have any protection, you know, or whatever. And you know what I mean. Everything was political. Nothing was something that was solid. That was actually going to help out Afghanistan. You know, that's what I saw from that.
Okay.
And I will also say, you think about the money being spent on war. From what I saw as a contract officer representative, most of the contractors aren't stealing.
Aren't stealing?
Aren't stealing. They're doing what they're supposed to do. They're happy that they got their contract. They are making too much money, I would think, but
they're not stealing.
they're not stealing it. They're putting it where it's supposed to be put. You know,
Okay.
and they're making the profits that they were told they could make. You know, so
Okay.
that's what I see.
How about so the feelings about war in general, not about the Afghan war or the war in Iraq and war in Afghanistan. What do you did it change your
There was
feelings about war?
There was something I told you when we were talking about Ukraine, right? And I think we were talking about Russia's chances.
Yes.
And I said that this conflict here is absolute proof that corruption breeds incompetence. You know, it's corruption that breeds incompetence. This is why Russia is so incompetent, is because when the guy at the top is on the take, then the generals are on the take, and by the time you get down to the soldier or the PMCS,
That's supposed to use what's supposed to be made.
doesn't have the money to you know, even check out his tires or grease his fittings or whatever. You know, I mean, and then you just absolutely see the incompetence in the training. You see the incompetence in the equipment. I hear that their protection, right? Their bulletproof
armor.
stuff is just nothing but wood in many cases.
Really?
They had this system called reactive armor for their tanks, where when the bullet hits, it sets off a charge on the other side, not by pressure, but actually by electricity. It's a physical thing that when a bullet hits a ceramic, the crack travels at the speed of light. On the other side is where it develops, and it sets off the charge. But when you open up the ERA, it's nothing. It's filled with rubber, just rubber pads that go on, like a tank pad. I mean, it's just terrible.
So you think, so you could say, to go the full circle, if it
Well-
wasn't for that incompetence, the war be over.
And it's a warning to America and other Western nations. Cut out the corruption if you can.
Mm-hmm.
Cut it out, because that's where the incompetence is.
Mm-hmm.
And in the future, hopefully China is just as incompetent.
Yeah.
We'll see.
All right. What do you think more? What do you wish more people knew about veterans?
Well, in my case, I'm happy with my service. When people say thank you for your service, I don't think anything of it. I think, you're the one that's serving me. So thank you for your service.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've had plenty of thanks, and quite honestly, with the DAV and the way the VA is set up, I'm receiving whatever fair share I deserve.
Thank you.
And the memories that I have in the military are thanks enough for me.
Thank you, Jason. What message would you like to leave for future generations who will hear this interview? What message for future generations? In other words, your son or anybody?
The few things that I talked about, but the main moral to this story, besides the lesson Amos, would be, please concentrate on that corruption breeds incompetence thing. I mean, if we're actually going to be the light of the world, we can't tolerate corruption.
Okay.
We really can't.
So it's a moral failing. You can't. If it's one thing about an individual having moral failings,
Sure.
but if it's a whole society, that's a problem.
Yeah, we just can't do that. And I mean, quite honestly, I wouldn't even. I would like to see President Biden give pardon to Edward Snowden. He was a whistleblower.
Mm-hmm.
Get him back over here.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get down on whistleblowers. You should fix the situation.
Okay.
And definitely make sure that the money gets spent wisely.
For what it's supposed to be spent for.
If everybody starts taking, we're going to be just as corrupt and just as incompetent.
And just
others.
as vulnerable as
Right.
what.
And we can't be.
What would you like people to know or remember from your story? What your story of service? What's the takeaway? What takeaway would you want them to know, Jason?
Be the best you can be, but have some fun. Have some fun with it.
Okay.
And the most fun I've ever had and the most memories I ever have is when I'm in training. I remember being in officer school, and we were Quad Deuce, 42, class of 42, and they called us. We started our own motto that we bring the rain, because every time we went on weekend duty, it rained, and it rained severely. It was lightning and all this other stuff, and it was almost like a complaint. But I would think to myself, and I tell others, "Hey, I don't want to be here when it's sunny. When it's sunny, I want to be at the beach or on a boat." My friends are in the house watching TV, and we're in the crap out here. That's good. There's no telling, and there's no telling when we go to another country what type of weather you're gonna. We might as well get the crap beat out of us every time we're getting training. Because I don't want to be out here when it's sunny.
Okay. Finally, anything else? Anything
it.
else that you want to?
I've said enough.
Well, we like to.
I've said enough. Man.
Myself, Vic, and Garrett
Yeah.
would.
Thanks for taking the time.
Would like to thank you for your service from our heart,
Okay.
and we would wish you the best. I mean, it's been a great interview.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Oh, cool. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.